Okay, so if you've spent any time on the internet lately, you have absolutely seen the hype. Peptides are everywhere. They're being sold as these miracle cures for everything from aging skin to nagging injuries. But at the same time, some of our most important medicines, life-saving drugs like insulin, well, that's a peptide too. So what is the real story here? That's the exact question we're going to dig into. Are we looking at the future of medicine here? Or are we just watching people dive headfirst into a really risky, unregulated market? Let's break it all down. All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to start with the basic science. Then we'll dive into the two completely different worlds of peptides, the legit drugs versus the online gray market. After that, we'll get into the FDA's big controversial crackdown, try to understand what's driving this huge demand, and finally, take a look at where all this is headed. So first things first, what in the world are we even talking about when we say peptide? Let's get the fundamentals down. Think of it like this. Your body uses amino acids as these tiny little Lego bricks. When you snap just a handful of them together, somewhere between 2 and 50, you get a peptide. And these little short chains are incredibly powerful. They act as messengers, sending signals all over your body to control, well, pretty much everything, from your metabolism to your immune system. And here's where it gets really interesting. The difference between peptides and their much bigger cousins, proteins. It really all comes down to size. You get more than 50 of those amino acid bricks together, and now you've got a protein. Now, this isn't just a boring science fact. It's a huge deal for regulators. See, the FDA treats smaller peptides, those under 40 amino acids, as small molecule drugs, kind of like an aspirin. But the bigger ones are treated as biologics, like a vaccine, and they have a totally different set of rules. This one distinction, it changes everything. Right. And because of that one regulatory line in the sand, two completely separate universes of peptides have popped up. You've got the world of heavily tested, legitimate medicine, and then you have what's basically the Wild West. So in the approved world, we've got these blockbuster drugs that have been changing lives for decades. I mean, insulin, a peptide, has been the key to managing diabetes for 100 years. And more recently, you've got the GLP-1s like semaglutide, which have totally revolutionized weight loss. These are all rigorously tested, prescribed by doctors, and made under super strict conditions. And then there's the gray market. This is where you find the stuff you hear about online, like BPC 157 that people swear by for healing injuries, or melatonin 2 for getting a tan without the sun. None of these are approved by the FDA for people to use, but their popularity has just exploded, creating this massive, unregulated industry that's all fueled by social media. So you might be wondering, how is this even legal? Well, it all works because of a loophole. Sellers get around the rules by cleverly marketing these chemicals with a little disclaimer, for research use only. That label lets them sell these really potent compounds right to consumers. But let's be real, most people buying them aren't running lab experiments. They're injecting this stuff themselves. As you can imagine, this booming gray market got so big that the FDA eventually had to step in. And that's what kicked off this huge regulatory fight, a really fierce debate about safety, access, and innovation. Okay, remember this key rule about size? Because these peptides are treated like regular drugs, they used to be available through something called compounding pharmacies. These are special pharmacies that can custom mix medications for specific patients. And for a long time, that's how a lot of people were getting their hands on these gray market peptides, often with a doctor's prescription. But then in 2023, the FDA basically dropped a bombshell. It moved 19 of the most popular gray market peptides. We're talking BPC 157, TB 500, the big ones, onto something called its Category 2 list. This basically means the agency thinks they pose significant safety risks, and it completely shut down the main legitimate channel for getting them by banning those compounding pharmacies from making them. And this move, as you can imagine, was immediately controversial. On one side, you have critics like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's a huge fan of peptides, and he argued the FDA acted illegally. His point is that the agency is only supposed to ban something if there's a clear safety signal, actual reports of people getting hurt, which he claims they just didn't have. But former FDA officials push back, and they push back hard. Janet Woodcock, who used to be the acting commissioner, says this is all about protecting a fundamental principle of public safety. She argues that letting these unproven substances out there breaks a societal pact we've had for over 60 years, the idea that drugs have to be proven safe and effective before they hit the market, not after people start using them. So, with all this controversy raging, why is the demand for these unapproved peptides just so massive? And what are the real dangers that might be hiding behind all those incredible promises? I mean, why is the demand so huge? You just have to open up your phone. Social media feeds are just flooded with influencers showing off these seemingly miraculous results, all thanks to peptides. You can see the promises here. It's a market built on the incredibly powerful allure of a quick fix for some of our most basic human desires, and it has absolutely exploded. Okay, but what about the real risks, the things the influencers don't talk about? Well, first, there's manufacturing. These unregulated labs could mean your vial has anything in it, bacteria, heavy metals, who knows? Second, these are synthetic molecules. Chemists often change them to make them last longer, but that little tweak can actually trigger your immune system to attack it. And of course, without clinical trials, we have no idea what the long-term effects are. And this isn't just theoretical. This is a perfect example of the real-world consequences. In 2023, at a conference in Las Vegas, 2 women got critically ill right after being injected with some of these exact peptides. It's just a really stark reminder that when you step outside that regulated system, there's no safety net. So, where does all this leave us? Well, the story of peptides is nowhere near over. In fact, it's actually speeding up on 2 different tracks at the same time: regulation and just breathtaking scientific innovation. On the regulatory side, this story isn't finished. The FDA has actually scheduled future reviews for some of the very peptides it restricted, like BPC 157. This could potentially open up a legal path for them to be used by compounding pharmacies again someday, but it's definitely not a guarantee. And while all that is happening, the science itself is taking a massive leap forward. AI tools like DeepMind's AlphaFold 2 can now predict the super complex 3D shapes of proteins and peptides with unbelievable accuracy. I mean, this is a total game changer. It lets scientists design new, targeted therapeutic peptides at a speed we couldn't even have imagined just a couple of years ago. And that really leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? On the one hand, you've got this incredible accelerating science that could unlock treatments for who knows how many diseases. But on the other hand, you have a public that's hungry for these innovations right now, and they're often willing to skip that slow, careful process of proving something is safe. So how do we balance that intense demand for innovation with the fundamental need for safety? That right there is the huge challenge that's going to define the future of peptides.